Entitled Stepmonster got herself banned from my wedding, by user Drujibugi42. TW, mention of child Abu *E. It's not too graphic, but it's there. I tried posting this on Ida through a different account a couple days ago, but it didn't work out. Given the trigger warning, I'm not surprised. I have since concluded my wife and I did the right thing, so this will be my last attempt to post this story. I tried to add some info and change the wording a little. All names are fake. My 28M stepmother, 49F, is a wannabe party planner. She has taken it upon herself to plan and host every party and holiday my dad's family has thrown since she married him. I never loved those occasions growing up. She's controlling and gets upset if people complain about anything, but humored her for my dad's sake. According to him, this helps her feel included. I'm getting married to my fiancée Jane, 26F, in July. We got engaged in early 2021, but Jane ended up getting pregnant a couple months after that, and we decided to postpone the wedding to focus on our son for a while. So we've had a long engagement. My stepmother has tried to hijack our wedding plans from day one, complaining, contacting our planner, showing up unannounced to Jane's dress appointments, etc., and we have repeatedly asked her to stop. Dad wants us to humor her, but she's clearly resentful of the fact that she's not hosting the wedding or being labeled mother of the groom in invitations. Besides our baby boy, we also have Luke, 4M, Jane's paternal half-brother. She got custody of him a few months into our relationship, after his parents died. I ended up moving in with them during the pandemic, and have been in Luke's life since he was a baby. He doesn't call me dad, and refers to us as his sister and his OP, but we love him like a son. Stepmother, though, hates Luke. She accuses Jane of baby-trapping her way into the family. That accusation only got worse after our son was born. My dad gets along with Jane and adores the kids, but stepmother demands him to refuse babysitting Luke, so we don't leave the kids with them often. Instead, Jane's brother and Sil usually watch the kids for us, as their children are close to ours in age. We had a thing last Sunday, and my BIL was out of town with his family. Jane's other siblings live in different cities, as well as my mom and sister. My dad agreed to babysit at our place, and we left. We came back to find both kids crying, stepmother screaming, and dad weakly trying to calm everyone down. Apparently, Luke had told stepmother that both he and our son were going to be our ring bearers, and she went ballistic. She screamed that she wasn't going to allow that because he wasn't family. She then made me need to include the trigger warning when he started crying. His lip is still split. She'd never gotten to this point before. We immediately banned her from our house and from our wedding. Dad is fuming and has said he's not going without her. He's also convinced half of his side of the family, by severely downplaying what stepmother did, to boycott the wedding as well. This includes my stepbrother, who fully agrees with his mother no matter how many times I try to tell him the truth. Me and Jane are refusing to budge, but many of my cousins who aren't coming anymore are asking us to reconsider. Pretty much all of Jane's family agrees with us, but one of her aunts has suggested that maybe stepmother is acting out because she doesn't feel welcomed by my family. I've honestly had it with my family enabling her behavior. I love my dad, and really want him at my wedding, but I am more than willing to go and see if it means protecting my family. Edit. I think I accidentally deleted the paragraph where I mentioned this, but we did press charges. We took Luke to the pediatrician the next day and gathered every piece of evidence we had. Not only did we have pictures of Luke's face, but by some miraculous strike of luck, we also had nanny cam footage. Some commenters were right to assume that my SM hadn't been invited to our house, but my dad hasn't really gone anywhere without her in years, so we took precautions. We didn't expect her to actually do anything this awful, but we've never trusted her with the kids. The physical attack happened off camera, but there is some footage of her screaming and Luke crying before and after the event. She now has a child abuse charge on her rap sheet. We wouldn't let her get away with this. Edit 2, there is a lot of additional info I want to add. I'll try to respond to at least some of the comments. I did not expect the amount I've gotten so far, but all I'll add for now is that Luke is okay. The visit to the pediatrician happened the day after. He already had a counselor. Jane was pretty traumatized when her dad and stepmom died, and was worried it would rub off on him, and will continue treatment. We've been hugging and pampering him a little more than usual, too. He's still upset, but is already doing much better. Mother emotionally and intellectually manipulates son for years, turns psychotic when she realizes that her throwing the kid out after an argument dooms the entire rest of family, by user Crair_Grimpa. For context, hi. I'm Claire, or as of late Delta Kruger, need to get that fixed. I'm the 27-year-old lad of this story. I am considered a high-functioning autistic individual, officially disabled by government standards. My mother for a long time, but especially these past 4 years, has been taking in and managing my checks from the government to keep the household afloat, making use of everything but $100 of it, which often got absorbed in moments of crisis as well since I didn't spend much, and while doing so was sowing seeds of doubt and fear into my mind about ever learning to live on my own, stating I was very far from ever reaching that. I myself, didn't really try to struggle or push my way out. Even when I turned 18, she offered to sign me up as a dependent but I thankfully declined. I decided for the good of the family to keep working with them. That changed about 4 years ago. 4 years ago my developmentally held back brain decided to say oh now it's time to teenager and I suddenly craved independence, looking every which way for a way to flee gracefully. Every time though there was some unfortunate situation or action that meant that if I left with my 2 incomes, my mother became my PSW, which that has its own irony later on, the family would fall apart and I'd be dooming all the animals, some of which were never listed on our lease at the time and were hidden every inspection. Now what happens when you cage a teenager that so desperately wants to be their own thing? They get rebellious. 3 years ago I got a therapist through my state insurance program, and after venting all the hoops my mom was making me jump through, and all the work that was piled on me due to mother's bum knee, and the stupid high expectations of me that would always end up creating screaming matches to her over those 3 years, she finally said to me as of roughly a week ago from this post that literally sounds like a abuse case. I initially dismissed that and said I'll keep it in mind as we ended the call that day, only to then immediately after get chewed out for jumping on a request my mom made earlier in the day as she had requested research for something that'd make another lengthy story. But regardless she basically chewed me out for hounding her in a ill mental state due to current situation despite telling me 5 minutes prior to do the research for her. That's when I went back to my room and texted my therapist to start filling out the paperwork. 1 day later, Mom and I get into another spat, this time about the dishes which were my daily chore. Sure it was assigned to me but my drive to do shit for her was dead by that point when my effort can be shot down on a whim even though it was ordered. The argument is hazy in my head for many a reason but the main one is Mom went feral the moment I snarked like a teen would. She slammed her way into my room to start grabbing shit and hucking it on the lawn, screaming for me to get out, breaking one of my monitors in the process. Dad stepped in and told her that since I was over 18 and on the lease that I was legally given 30 days notice, which is when she stopped, turned to me, said well then I'm gonna make those next 30 days hell for you and walked to her room. Dad let me get the few things she did get on the lawn back inside at that point and I sat down at my chair. Then it dawned on me, she played herself. For years she said that if I went away she would have to get rid of everything, and I mean everything. It was all propped up by my SSI and the income she got being my personal support worker. Well now she had given me and the government valid reason with her behavior alone that even if she rescinded the 30-day notice that we couldn't keep our home anyways. It was refreshing. In that moment I felt courage well up in my chest, she couldn't manipulate me anymore, she fell into what she had made of her life and was blind to my connections I made for years outside the family, constantly slamming them for being liberals. I took that renewed energy to reach out to those friends, those found families, my lovers, and even my grandparents. I looked through my cards and emails and found my disabilities care workers info and told of the situation, and burnt the midnight oil chasing my new life while my mom literally pounded the adjacent wall between my bedroom and her bathroom screaming like a banshee about not hearing me pack fast enough. To keep this from going on for ages I'm gonna be brief on the next few stages to now. Grandparents saw this explosion brewing for years, opened arms and let me take my belongings, and my bearded dragon pancake, in while mother was away on psychiatric care. With my caseworkers' help I got my SSDI under control, I got guidance on what steps to take next, and they're doing research for intermediary places after grandparents. Me and my BF are looking into joining together and living somewhere in Washington, with my found family chipping in as well. As of today, I'm officially disowned from my family. My mother has not only disowned my grandparents, but also forced Dad to as well. I tried to contact them to drop me off the phone plan so I can keep my phone number and all I got was the statement of disownment and that further contact will lead to a restraining order. I got a special state-related order to have their firearms reclaimed since mother is a psychopath and have my grandparents locking their doors now out of fear. I'm waiting for my case manager to get back to me to have my documents extracted from their residence, and basically all I got to do is play the waiting game, watching my parents burn cause mom pushed all their connections away, even my brother, who's stoic as all hell, showed he was ready to fly too. So the main thing to take away from this is: learn to value yourself, and judge the words of those even closest to you, for you never know if you're just a pay pig to your own mother. If people want, I can refine those breezed over parts, but that's enough to get the picture. P.S. As I was printing the paperwork to file for the firearm removal, I realized I still had access to the printer back home. It took all my willpower to not print a fuck you message to it, and instead I just disconnected my PC from the web-accessible printer. Despite blaming me for everything falling apart, she was the one who kicked me out, and I was always taught to not have the last word. Day 2, I have softly realized that if I'm going to be posting an update, it's best to do both a comment version and an addition to the original post through editing. Long story short, the paperwork I filled I just turned in. Got a court time in about 2 hours. Zero court experience whatsoever, so I'm going by the seat of my pants. If it goes well though, my grandparents and I can sleep a little safer knowing that if they get retaliatory they'll have to do it with sticks and stones and not 100% pure American freedom, if you catch my drift. Day 2 Part 2. Keeping it brief cuz video planned. Extreme risk protection order dismissed. Judge said I was polite and concise, but officially there was not enough evidence. High bar of standard for that petition. Getting in talks with Grandpa to see if his lawyer can rephrase all this better to the court. Day 2 Part 3, huzzah! I finished the video. And it only got split in half cause the audio fucked up. Part 1, Part 2. Day 3, look ma. I made it on TV. I am mildly famous. Entitled Mom Thinks Her Son Is Entitled to My Merchandise, by user Corkinator. I, 22NB, am finishing up my last semester of college and decided to sell some keychains and vinyl stickers I made at my school's spring market. I laser cut these keychains and put slogans, royalty-free icons, and some of my own personal designs on them. The keychains are pretty reasonably priced, $5 to $8 depending on the complexity of the design, and usually sell like hotcakes at the market. I'm a big Minecraft fan, so I make a lot of creeper keychains, which are pretty popular with the younger demographic. I was at my stall at the market and was finishing up a few transactions with customers when a boy, probably age 10 to 13, snags one of my more detailed and larger Minecraft keychains off of my display. I call after him and tell him he needs to pay for the keychain. He continues to run away and I flag over the market coordinator, John, to report the kid. Eventually John finds the kid and tells him he needs to pay for the keychain. The kid, followed by his mom, makes their way over to my stall. I tell the mom that her kid stole the keychain and it either needs to be returned or paid for. The mom immediately begins going off about how ridiculous and embarrassing the whole ordeal is. Not only did I scream at her son, but I sent John over to make him pay, embarrassing him in front of the whole market. The mother exclaims that her son is going through therapy because he has onset social anxiety disorder as well as onset agoraphobia. She proceeds to look down at my shoes and see that I have a creeper on my Crocs and says that I could relate to the love of the video game and cut her son some slack because that's the honorable thing to do for a child in need. I told her that I would be happy to give him a discount, but I could not afford to give these away for free as I use the profits to pay for my college tuition. I also told her that I sympathize with her son, but social anxiety is not an excuse to be a thief. This seemed to set her off and she began screaming at me saying her son is not a thief. At this point she was scaring customers away and people were actively walking away from the booths near mine to avoid the conflict. I tried to keep a level head and at this point her son looked like he wanted to shrivel away. I felt bad for the kid, no wonder he has social anxiety with a mom who was willing to make a scene like this. The kid tried to give me the $8 that the keychain cost, but the mom took it out of his hand and shoved it in her pocket. Eventually, John came and asked her to step away from the booth as she was disturbing customers. She ended up leaving and the kid paid for his keychain. I ended up throwing in a free sticker to apologize for him having a mother like that. Overall I ended up selling out of my stock and had an uneventful rest of the market. Some onlookers even remarked that I handled the situation pretty well. Needless to say, I will probably be switching to online sales for the foreseeable future. My mom was pregnant, and my parents blamed me for losing the baby, by user foglamp03. Well, now I know why my parents tried to force me to move back in on Thanksgiving. My mom was pregnant with kid number 6. And I only recently found out. To start things off with, one of my siblings found my Reddit account not too long after my last post. And they showed it to our parents, who in turn showed up at my apartment screaming at me about how I had set them up to get my mom arrested and made the world think they are bad parents. Well, they are. I called them out while standing in my doorway about all the shit they've done, right down to leaving my siblings at my door on a day they knew I worked. That's bad parenting any way you look at it. And it didn't really matter that I set them up, because I would have otherwise called the police on mom anyway when she left kids at my door. And in the end it would have made no difference. My dad looked like he was ready to raise a fist to me, and I said that action alone proves me right that they're shitty parents. Then stated that if he tried to hit me, it'd turn out like last time. And I don't think his balls could take another hit from my boots. And yes, I was wearing them. Dad seemed to wince and clench his legs together at the thought of what I did to him last time. So he ended up leaving and dragging my mom out by the hand. And he yelled back before leaving the hallway that he expected me to pay them back for the fine they had to pay for child abandonment since it was all my fault. I told them to fuck off and that I didn't owe them shit. They didn't say anything back. It was just recently that I got some very bad news. My mom had been about 6 months pregnant, and she lost the baby after a bad fall at home when she slipped on wet porch steps and landed face down in gravel. Honestly, I couldn't tell she'd been pregnant at all the time I saw her prior to that. She's a bit on the heavier side, and has always been clumsy. But not fat. Just enough that you really couldn't tell if she was pregnant or not. It is sad, and this was her first miscarriage. So she really wanted someone to blame. And that someone had to be me in her eyes. Because I'd destroyed the family by not helping, and by costing them so much money. She and Dad showed up at my apartment again with her in crutches, just to say it was all my fault she lost the baby because I refused to come home and help when they needed me. It turned into a pretty big argument where I called them out on how they were just looking for free childcare, and looking to blame me for something that's not my fault. It's not my fault they got pregnant again when mom is 44 years old. And it's not my fault it happened anyway. Blame it on the rotten old porch Dad was too cheap to ever fix or replace. Well, my father laid his hands on me again when I said that, and I got a sharp right hook from him. And then I ended up kicking his ass one more time. I'd never really stopped working out at the gym, and I'm even stronger than I was when I took him down last Thanksgiving. He didn't stand a chance. I blanked out in a rage, and ended up breaking his nose and knocking out both of his front teeth before my mom screaming made me stop. Police were called, and I was put in cuffs while my father had to be taken to the hospital. Thankfully the hallways for my apartment complex have CCTV. And I had my phone camera going behind me in my apartment as well that I started recording when my parents knocked. The footage easily showed that my father attacked me first, and I defended myself. I'm essentially in the clear as it was labeled self-defense. But now my parents are wanting to sue me for my dad's medical bills and the fine they had to previously pay. Dad can't go to work for some time due to the beating I gave him. He's in a neck brace with a broken nose, a black eye, 2 lost teeth, and who knows what else. His beard also had to be shaved off, which he's also very unhappy about. He was already pretty much dead to me even before this. So I guess this makes him double dead to me. And what little power he ever thought he had as my father is gone. I'm physically much stronger than him, and soon I'll be starting a new job that pays way better thanks to all my hard work these past few months. And maybe with a few years of saving, I'll get a much better place to live. My eldest sibling called me to say I was their hero for beating the shit out of Dad. And that they were planning on leaving just like I did when they turned 18. But it was my next sibling after them that found my Reddit posts after hearing them on YouTube, and that led to my parents finding out because my mom heard them talking about it, and made them show my post to her. They said she was enraged and started breaking things. My siblings have apologized that they let mom and dad find out. And that they would have never said anything if they'd known mom was listening. Both have also said that they're happy there won't be another baby though. They're already having to do a lot of the childcare for my parents right now. And they hate it. They admitted to blaming me for leaving at first too. But they realized that when you become an adult, you deserve to take your own path. It's still up in the air whether or not my parents actually will try to sue me. But I think I can safely say that it'll be a loss for them if they do. One of my friend's uncles is a lawyer. And said he'd represent me if my parents decide to sue. And he also says that they don't have much of a case since it was self-defense. And to my parents, who will probably read this, I only have this to say. Leave me the hell alone. You don't own me or my siblings. And when the time comes for them to be able to leave at 18, I'll help them get out of your house. You both have always been selfish narcissists. It's not my fault mom lost the baby. And it's not my fault you had such a hard time without me in the house to be your free babysitter. Consider that broken nose and lost teeth as a good reason to never even touch me again. And don't forget that I have only told a fraction of the shit that went on in my life thanks to y'all here. If I wanted to, I could post story after story of the shit that went on in my childhood. But that wouldn't bring me satisfaction. So just leave me the hell alone. Edit, I wasn't going to mention it before. But yes, my mom did have to give birth to a dead baby in the hospital. My siblings told me mom came home with a small urn that she keeps in the bedroom. And my parents held a private funeral between themselves. They pretty much just left with the urn for a few hours, and came back drunk. That's about all I know on that. But even I felt this was just too sad to mention previously. Yeah, I hate my parents. But losing a child is very hard on most people. That baby would have still been my sibling if it had lived. My parents refused to even mention the gender. So if this post gets read on YouTube, I ask that any narrators please not publicly read this edit. As I'm really not comfortable with it. But the rest of the post is fine. Edit 2, I've asked my siblings for more details, and my mom was in the hospital for nearly a week with whatever injuries she had from the fall. Someone here questioned if she was pushed. Now I'm questioning that myself. But the best explanation I could get is that mom slipped and fell off the porch while in a hurry to leave somewhere. I've heard of people getting hurt worse in stupider ways. I've also looked into the cremation thing. And it said 10 days to get the ashes. So, that means the urn they came home with was empty then? I'm so confused. But then again, the funeral thing my parents did was several days after my mom got out of the hospital, and my parents kept that urn in the bedroom until the day of their little funeral. Guess they could have gotten the ashes then. Might explain why they came home drunk. But this situation is so weird and twisted that questioning it further is making my brain hurt. EPS think equality is oppression. It's okay to say that I'm unmarried, don't have a degree and depend on my parents, but the moment I say it about my coworker it's degrading and hating on her just because she has a kid and I don't. By user trauma through a I, 23F, am doing a paid internship in my field and also working a weekend job as a waitress to pay some bills. My coworker is a few months younger than me and everyone else is in their 30s. This coworker mostly works with me on weekends when her ex watches her kid or mornings when her kid is in school. Both of us moved out at 21 and I got $5,000 in total from my parents to pay for college and she was handed $3,000 last summer alone by her parents to send her kid to daycare. I made a one-off comment about how everyone forgets that I'm actually 6 months older than her. My stepmom and other people said people see her as older because they see you as a young girl who's still in school, working part-time, dependent on her parents and unmarried, and they see her as a mother. I pointed out that she's also a young girl who's unmarried, has no boyfriend, works part-time, hasn't finished school and depends on her parents to pay her bills. The fact that she's a mother doesn't change that. Now apparently my comment was degrading her and shaming her, but it was fine to say about me. If it's not degrading me to point out that I haven't finished school, never been married and can't pay all my bills on my own, it's not degrading her. When I ask what's degrading her about what I said, the people accusing me just get upset and call me a bunch of names.